Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Stellium Astrology podcast. I'm Stephanie James, your host, and today I am broadcasting, I'm recording really, from the local Sainsbury's car park. It's a supermarket. Actually, our local Sainsbury's is a hypermarket, which is it's got everything, which is quite cool. It's actually quite stuffy and warm at the moment. It's very warm, so I might have to open the window. I'm not planning to do a long episode. Ewan's taking a nap in the back. If you've just tuned in for the first time ever, Ewan is my little boy. It's his first birthday soon, and in his first year of life, in order to keep the podcast going, I've adopted a kind of do it wherever you can get the chance to do it attitude. Just do it. It's the short way of saying that. So I've adapted my style in order to just get it done and get it out there. So it's been an experience. Now I am bringing a lot of changes to what I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks and months. I will be letting all of my subscribers know and my patrons know. They'll be in the know-how first. But if you would like to support the podcast, you can support me on the Patreon page. I'm going to set up a new goal. Basically, at the moment, I can afford to put my little boy into nursery. I absolutely have to do it. And I do have to return to my square job. But I have managed to work it so that I've got an extra half day where I can just focus on doing my astrology work. So my goal, which you guys can help me achieve, is to be able to afford a half day a month, an extra half day a month, which means I could spend a whole day planning episodes, planning YouTube videos, writing content for my website, sharing my passion for the craft with you lovely people who, by all accounts, everyone who gets in touch with me tells me how much they're enjoying the podcast. So, we've had over 40,000 downloads of the podcast so far. So I can't be doing anything too wrong, can I? That's exciting that we've had that many downloads. It's also the second birthday coming up extremely soon. I'm recording this in advance. I believe the second birthday is the 29th of July. So I believe that it will be next week. It'll be next week when I release this episode. My goodness. Crazy. Anyway, so I'm the founder of stelliumastrology.com. I'm also the presenter of this podcast, the host of this podcast. I wrote horoscopes for Elle magazine a few years back, and I am also a tutor at the London School of Astrology. So, I've been involved in astrology for a while, a fairly decent amount of time. I've had quite a lot of clients. I've travelled to the far east and the far west to present my passion to groups of people who were willing enough to come along and listen to what I had to say and actually part with their hard-earned cash for the privilege to do so. So, I've tried to spread my message as far as I can. This podcast has reached way further than my actual initial physical travels. I never in a million years imagined how far this podcast would broadcast to, the little pockets of the world that I haven't even been to in person. It amazes me. So anyway, enough waffle. Today I just wanted to do a little episode on synastry. I've done an episode on can you hear synastry, and I actually think it's interesting because you can hear synastry, and this is another episode where you can hear synastry. But it's the kind of synastry you might not want to listen to. Definitely not the un-auto-tuned, unproduced, uncut version of this collaboration. So this is a romantic and professional collaborative effort from somebody, a glamour model in the UK called Katie Price, who was her glamour model name was Jordan, and her ex-husband and father of two of her children, Peter Andre. I don't know how well known Peter Andre is. But he has been, he's definitely had a very successful career in the UK in the 90s with Mysterious Girl. And I'm assuming he's had success in Australia, which is where he grew up. Katie Price is an extremely successful glamour model and entrepreneur. And she even, I believe, was on the cover of Playboy. I don't know if she was like the first British glamour model to appear on Playboy. I might be wrong when I say that, but I know she was pally pally with Hugh Hefner, and had a bit of a I don't know, a bit of, say, fortune. I don't know. She's done she did very well for herself. But anyway, let's have a look at their charts. So Katie Price has got, and by the way, we don't have a time for her. We've only got it's all I can find for her is noon, which is not really a time that we know to be accurate. Whereas Peter Andre, his birth data, I think it was an A, or was it a C? Gosh, I can't remember. I'm sorry, guys. I planned this episode a couple of days ago. So anyway, let's have a quick look. I'll go with Katie first because Katie is, I have met her. She's really actually quite short. I think her Wikipedia page says she's 5'7", but she's definitely not. Because I'm 5'8.5", and she was very short standing next to me. So she has got Sun in Gemini, and it's at 0059. So it's in the early degrees of Gemini. Let me just check. If she was born at midnight instead of midday, her Sun would still be in Gemini. So I've got her down as born on the 22nd of May 1978 at 12 o'clock. We don't know how accurate that is, in the afternoon in Brighton in the UK. So she has got Sun at 059 Gemini, which makes it about 1 degree Gemini. And interestingly, her moon is at noon is in Scorpio. If we go ahead 12 hours to, the following day, if she was born in the afternoon after 12 p.m, it's potentially she's got a moon in Sagittarius, anything up to about 7 degrees Sagittarius. But prior to that, she has a moon in Scorpio, and her moon is down at 29 degrees and 40 minutes of Scorpio. So it's interesting because she was born on a full moon. Now, she's a very full moon personality, and if you've ever met anybody born on a full moon, you can see that in their personality. There's something very usually outgoing, or very, I don't want to say obvious, but very. I think there's a sense of confidence about a full moon, whether or not it's like a kind of arrogant confidence, or whether it's just a reassured, self-assured personality. But there's definitely something outgoing and, usually quite vivacious about a full moon character. That said, like Donald Trump was born on a full moon. There's lots of famous people that were born on full moons. It's a good aspect to have, because it means that the moon is in full sight. So both of the luminaries are kind of, in their fullest, to an extent. But yes, so her moon at lunchtime at noon is 29 degrees and 40 minutes of Scorpio. So it looks as though she also has, depending on the position of the moon, it looks as though she's got... Oh, right, so her ascendant, interestingly, is 27 Leo. I can get on board with a Leo ascendant for Katie Price, actually. She does have that... Her hair is very much her crown and glory. I remember watching a programme about her, and she spent so much money on beauty treatments, an insane amount of money. And, she wasn't a natural glamour model. She was somebody who had to work really hard at it. She didn't have very big boobs. I mean, she had normal size boobs, like she was just like a very normal, quite attractive girl. She had very curly hair. But she's, over the years, she's enhanced her body. She had implants and went up to like a double D, and then she went up again. And, I don't know, she just suddenly got thrust into the spotlight. I do remember it back in the 90s. She was a page 3 model. Page 3 is there's a red top newspaper in the UK called The Sun. And she was a page 3, like on page 3, they used to have topless glamour models. It's a bit of a... sort of, I say a light-hearted newspaper. It's not particularly difficult read, and it's a very it's very simplistic in its storytelling. But anyway, so yeah, she was somebody who used to be on the page 3, and well known for that. And so she's got, let's have a quick look and see what else she's got. She's got Venus and Jupiter in Cancer. Now, actually, she's a bit of an exaggerated feminine figure. And if you think of like Venus in Cancer, you might think of a maternal type of figure. You know, you might think of somebody who has a motherly kind of essence about them. You might think that they're quite curvy, perhaps. Definitely Venusian figures are very curvy. Whereas, like I said, she had to work hard. She didn't have the natural curves when she was born. She enhanced that. You might say that Jupiter enhances Venus when they're together. And in Cancer, it could be about developing the womanly aspects associated with Cancer. As we know, Cancer is the sign that's associated with the moon and breasts and milk and motherhood, that kind of thing. She's also got Mars and Saturn in Leo. She's having her Saturn opposition at the moment. Mars is at 18 Leo, Saturn's at 24 Leo, and currently Saturn's 24 Aquarius retrograde as I record this. So she's having probably quite a tough time. It may be to do with her children. Often when you're a parent and you have a Saturn opposition, it's either about your children and learning about them testing boundaries and seeing what they can get, pushing back. Prior to being a parent, Saturn can be about taking on a lot of responsibility at work and having to deal with perhaps authority figures, or a lot of pressure being applied in an area of your life where you have to deal with rules, regulations, that kind of thing. So if you were at school, for example, it could be about your GCSEs, or your like high school, like taking your exams that are quite important for how you do for the rest of your life, basically. A Mars-Saturn conjunction is quite diligent, actually. And there is one thing I will say about her, is that she's entrepreneurial and extremely hardworking. She's as far as it goes, she knows how to make money work for her, or she has done. I know that actually at the moment she is experiencing or going through bankruptcy. But she's set herself up and her children up with YouTube channels, and she's making regular content for her YouTube channel. So it's quite interesting that she's not particularly being favoured by television and that sort of thing. She's on a show called Loose Women, which is like a panel show with a bunch of women who talk about all sorts of stuff. She goes on there every now and again, but I think she's again, in that entrepreneurial way, she's using YouTube to publicise and market herself. Which is, quite an inventive way to keep yourself in the public eye. So she's, with that Gemini sun, she's never known to really mince her words. She's very, very, I'd say articulate. She's quite, she's not really the most well-spoken person in the world, but she knows how to, she can make a cutting insult. She really can cut people down. She's very Scorpio, and I don't doubt for a second that her moon is in Scorpio. I really think her moon is in Scorpio. I don't think it's Sagittarius. I know that she's had lots of stories in the newspapers about losing trust of people, her partner's cheating, and people that she thought she could trust selling secrets about her to the newspapers for money. She's definitely dealt with a lot of Scorpio issues in her life. So I really do think that there is an element of Scorpio, her Scorpio moon. That said, she's also got Mercury opposite Uranus, so that could also be about trust issues and having to cut people off. Mercury is in Taurus and Scorpio, Uranus is in Scorpio. So, that's interesting. Not only is she having a Saturn opposition, she's also having her Uranus opposite. Is that right? Uranus in Taurus. Yeah, she is. That's interesting. She's having Uranus opposite her Uranus as well. Oh, yeah, that's right, because when you're about in your sort of early, I think about 42, around the age of 42, give or take, you have your Uranus opposition. So she's having that as well as her Saturn opposition. Gosh, she's having a tough time, I would say. But anyway, so yeah, She's definitely got an ability, that Gemini ability to juggle a lot. She's got that Scorpio ability to she provokes quite a strong reaction in people, and I think she's a very Marmite person. For the US listeners, Marmite is yeast extract. I don't know if you have it in the US, but they sell it in Australia, and it's called Vegemite, or it's similar to Vegemite. And it's a flavour that a lot of people in the UK, either they love it or they hate it. So if you say, oh they're a Marmite person, it's because they're kind of, you either love them or you hate them. So that's just an interesting little look at her chart. And she met Peter Andre on a TV show, celebrity TV show called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, where they go to the jungle and they have to do all these challenges, which are very horrible challenges, like they have to eat bugs, and I'm sure they've got all sorts of things like that in the US as well. So they go out to Australia, they have to go into like a camp and live in substandard conditions, and definitely not the sort of conditions they're used to. Now, Katie Price she's got that Mars Saturn. It's almost like a determination and an ambition, which is just, it's hard to deviate from the goal once you've set your sights on it, because her ambition and her drive are very tied in together. It's very much I don't know, she's very driven, I would say, with a strong ambition. She met Peter on this program, and everyone kept nominating her to do all the challenges, like eat all the bugs and go into like a coffin, and they just pour like cockroaches in and horrible things, and they did all of this stuff, and she just took them on the chin, and people ended up loving her for it. They were just like, she's amazing, like she just does it, she doesn't complain, she just gets on with it. And you have to hand it to her, she's extremely tough. As you'd imagine somebody with like a Mars Saturn conjunction and a Scorpio moon, they can just take what's thrown at them, and it almost bounces off. It's like a kind of armour that just doesn't really get. And she may be deeply affected by it, but she never reveals how she feels, and that's the beauty of a Scorpio moon. They can very much mask how they feel and never really reveal anything. She'll be open and honest. She says what she thinks. She speaks her mind. And you can tell when somebody's annoyed her or upset her, but she never really actually shows her emotions. She overrides it with her intellect, which I think is the interesting combination of the sun in Gemini and the moon in Scorpio. So Peter's got sun in Pisces at 8 degrees. He has Venus in Aquarius, not too far away, 10 degrees away. He has Jupiter in Aquarius at 0 degrees. He has Moon in Capricorn and Mars in Capricorn too. Moon at 4 and Mars at 10. They're quite close together. You might say that that's descriptive of her Mars-Saturn conjunction, actually. It's got that vibe about it. And you can say that in a relationship, you can see that she could epitomise that Mars-Capricorn, that hard-working, determined attitude. They're born around the same time, actually. So, he's 1973, 27th of Feb, 1973, 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Harrow in UK. So apparently he was born in the UK and then was brought up in Australia. I think he's Greek Cypriot as well. I think he's of Greek heritage as well. And he's got Saturn in Gemini. So he's got, let's have a look at their charts together quickly. So his Saturn is in Gemini, hers is in Leo. So her Mars is, it's a bit wide, but sextile his Saturn. And her Mars is flavoured with her Saturn anyway. Their suns it's a bit wide, but there's a square there, but it is a bit wide. But yeah, it looks as though, and let's see, what's her moon, what's his moon, his ascendant. So his ascendant, oh look, there you go, his ascendant is Cancer, so 20 Cancer if his birth time's correct. So her Jupiter and her Venus are in the sign of his ascendant, like it falls into his 12th house by equal, but it has a her Venus and her Jupiter are probably something that gave him I don't know, I guess there's a sense of believing in somebody, and, you know, there's this attractiveness. She probably, her exaggerated, you know, womanliness, which she spent a lot of money having surgery. And I would say that her 29-degree Scorpio moon, if it is 29 degrees, is very descriptive of the many transformations she's been through. She's had her breasts enlarged, she's had them reduced, she's gone from dark hair to blonde hair, she's tried all sorts of different looks, and now she's going through lots of surgery. She's had lots of facelifts, and it's funny because it's like she's barely recognisable, and I wonder if she's ever going to end up like that Bride of Wildenstein, you know, the woman that just keeps on having surgery to the point that her face is very, you know, it's smooth, but it's like she looks like a cat, you know, she just doesn't look like a human anymore. And I think Katie Price may end up going that way. But anyway, so yeah, they have got some interesting synastry. His nodes fall on, her nodes, her north and south node. Her north node is on his Pluto. I don't know if I mentioned, but whenever Pluto's involved with the nodes in synastry, there's this kind of like fascination, like, you know, it's almost like a kind of moth to the flame type thing. And I do think it's also interesting that Peter and Katie also had, they're both really well known for their bodies. Like, she's very much glamour model. He was very well known for his six-pack, other than his pop career, his six-pack. I know a few more Peter Andre songs than I would care to admit usually, but that's because my cousin Gemma, who is, you know, she's my cousin, she's a Leo. She's obsessed with Peter Andre. She also had a Scorpio moon. She has a Scorpio moon, interestingly enough, and she has a Mars-Saturn conjunction. Interesting, that little connection there. I wonder if there's something about Peter Andre that attracts that Mars-Saturn-Scorpio vibe. Potentially, it's because you know, he's got that watery ascendant, so anything in water signs is going to be trine. And like I said, that moon Mars in Capricorn. So yeah, so that's interesting. But yeah, so one of the things that I think is interesting about Peter Andre and Katie Price is that they took their personal relationship and turned it into a business relationship, a little bit like the Beckhams. So they had lots of coverage of their wedding. If you Google Katie Price, Peter Andre wedding, I think it was Hello Magazine or something, the wedding dress, she looks like, as we would call it in the UK, a bog roll holder or a toilet roll. You know, you used to be able to buy these fancy looking little things, like a doll that was wearing a big skirt, like a wedding dress type skirt, and you'd put it over toilet. Like, this is so like I don't even know, like 1960s, 1970s kind of home decor type thing. But you'd put these like toilet roll decorative things over the top of a toilet roll to, I don't know, hide the fact that you had a toilet roll in your bathroom. I don't know why you would do that, but yeah, I remember my grandmother having some, like all these like little crocheted skirts that would go over the toilet roll with a doll, sort of like looks like she's wearing this massive puffy skirt. And that's what she looked like when she got married to Peter Andre. She had a bog roll holder wedding dress. Yeah, it was very... I think one of my friends, I don't think it's called Ghetto Fabulous, because no, I don't think it's Ghetto Fabulous. It was just, I'm sorry to say it, but it was incredibly tacky. It's an incredibly tacky wedding. But that is what Peter Andre and Katie Price were like together. They were just so tacky. It was just, it was very, she's very much like a unicorns and princesses kind of girl who likes, you know, pink. You know, she's very, very... I don't know if she was just going for that and that was just her image, or if that's just really who she is. I think she does love pink. I think she does. She's had a lot of speeding tickets and she seems to always be driving these pink Jeeps, and she loves horses and things like that. So she's a girly girl in that respect. But yeah, so Google their wedding pictures. So they got married, and it seemed like it was like a match made in heaven for the pair of them. But then they, you know, she had a young boy from a previous relationship with a footballer, Dwight York, I think it was. Was it Dwight York? Gosh, now I can't remember. I think it was, yeah. So Peter became father to her son, as well as fathering two children with her. One was called Princess Tiami. And what's the other boy? What's the boy called? Oh, I can't remember now what the boy was called. They've all got YouTube channels of their own, I think. But yeah, so it's a an interesting thing, because their family was a famous family, and you know, Peter having Cancer rising, and her Venus and Jupiter falling into his 12th house kind of made him accessible to everybody. You know, he suddenly was thrust into the public eye in a very big way when he got with her. And his moon and Mars are in the 6th house, so it's like kind of a, you know, family for him is about routine, potentially about, you know, work, and you know, it's, I don't know, it might feel like a lot of responsibility, but he's up for that. He's designed for lots of responsibility, and I believe he's passionate about his family, and he does seem like a very good dad, and she does seem like a very good mum. I don't know, you know, she seems like she loves her children very much, and she's dedicated. But yeah, so what else they decided to do was to create an album together of Disney hits. They did I Can Show You the World. They did that song together. And Peter can actually sing. He's had a pop career. But Jordan, Katie Price, she's not a pop star, and she's actually not a very good singer. I think due to being with Peter Andre, she also got a spot as a Eurovision contestant one year. Again, in the US, we have this competition in Europe called the Eurovision Song Contest. I don't know if the UK takes part anymore because we're no longer in the EU. But yeah, it's like a big kind of, it's just a kind of celebration of like European quirkiness almost, and it's just like a big song competition, like a battle of the bands type of thing. But it's kind of become a bit of a joke and a bit of fun, taken with a pinch of salt type of thing. But anyway, she represented the UK one year. I don't think she was particularly good, but 100%. What you need to do is go on Spotify and type in Peter Andre Jordan or Peter Andre and Katie Price and listen to the album. I think they did all like Disney songs, or at least they did some love songs together. I don't know how well that album sold. I think they probably marketed it quite well at the time, did something that appealed to people, so that they went, oh yeah, let's buy their album. But not long ago, a music producer who worked on the recording of that album released the unedited recordings of Katie Price's actual singing voice, and Peter Andre's as well, so you can hear what they actually sound like. Now, you can imagine that they do want to sell this kind of fantasy image of this kind of romance. This, you know, like I said, it's quite an entrepreneurial their relationship, and it became about a brand as opposed to a genuine connection, I think. And I always feel like that's the way it would always be if you sold your wedding pictures to a magazine. It's like exploiting your relationship for money. It suddenly cheapens the whole thing. I'm not trying to like slate anybody who would ever consider to do that. It's just, in my opinion, I can't imagine why you'd want to share something personal like that. But, you know, I've got a Scorpio moon. Please get in touch and tell me if you disagree and why. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to take on a different opinion and understand it from a different perspective. But I think that the fantasy of their relationship is where they've got this her Jupiter, Venus in Cancer in his 12th house. And if we flip it around and have a look, we don't really know what her ascendant is actually, so it's not really worth looking. But it's an interesting kind of thing to think about how they're sort of dealing with this kind of fantasy. And also her Juno falls on his Neptune. I also find it quite interesting. They've both got Neptune in Sag, but yeah, her Juno falls into at 17 Sagittarius. His Juno, which is on her Neptune. And if her moon actually if she was born up to midnight of that day, her moon would actually sit on his Neptune too. So there's something to be said about that potentially. We don't know her birth time, like I said, but there is this kind of level of fantasy and glamour about them that they were kind of selling to people. Like this kind of unrealistic or, dreamy kind of image. And, I guess it worked for a while. But anyway, yeah, listen to that song, homework assignment, listen to their recorded version and then listen to the one that's like unedited, because the unedited version is honestly just such a shock to the system. I don't know, I'm a musician. I call myself a musician. I play instruments. You know, I always hung out with musicians. I guess you can only really call yourself a musician if you're gigging and getting paid for what you do. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that too. But yeah, basically, definitely check out their tune, and check out how out of tune she sounds too, and just think about how synastry can sound when you put two people together. You know, is it plastic? Does it sound plastic? Is it fake? Was this relationship ever really real? I believe so. I think that it was real at one point, but I don't think it was ever built on anything particularly realistic. Anyway, that's all for today. Hi, Ewan. I guess I've got to go. All right then, take care, guys, and I'll speak to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye now.